Hi, welcome back. So, as promised, today's episode is a Q&A with our team. This is something that was requested a few times, so we're bringing it to the podcast because we all get questions frequently, and I'm sure there is a lot of confusion, frustration. There's information all over the internet, all over social media. And one of the things that's really important to us is not only helping you feel good, but also helping you have the correct context and having more of an empowerment in your body and understanding what is best for you. So we're going to do some of these Q&A sessions and today answer some of the questions that we most frequently get and give a little more context behind some of the questions that were submitted. If there's anything from today that you have follow-up questions on, there are links in the bottom where you can submit some of those follow-up questions. So the next time that we do our Q&A session, we will answer those there. But some of you have not met some of our team. If you don't know, when you work with us, you're not just working with me, you're working with my entire team. And we all have different specialties and reasons that we do what we do for varying things that have happened to us professionally, personally. So I would like you to meet my team first before we dive into your Q&A. So say hello to Sammy, who is our nutritionist, exercise specialist, doula, pre-postnatal,
All the
everything.
things. Hello. I'm Sammy. I'm a fitness expert and functional nutritionist. Like Brooke said, I have a specialty in prenatal postpartum. And the reason that I love this area so much is because I felt massively unsupported going through my own fertility, pregnancy, journey, and then especially into motherhood. And I saw that there was a huge gap in care when it came to supporting women, especially as they became moms. I understand that the job that I have as a mother is to raise a healthy individual. And so how can I do that if I'm not healthy myself? So my goal is to help women feel fully supported in their health throughout their fertility journey, throughout pregnancy, and then into motherhood.
Awesome. Our next team member is Colleen. Hello.
Hello.
Everybody's heard you before on our mold Q&A podcast, but mold is not the only thing that Colleen does. Why don't you share a little bit about what brought you to this?
Yeah, my journey started with my own health journey, just battling a lot of gut issues. I had a ton of medical diagnoses myself that didn't really match up, but turns out they were all related to celiac. So after kind of going down every specialist in the book, and realizing that gut health was so intricately connected to everything in our body, our mental health, our physical health. It really led me to do a bit of a career change and look into nutrition and just really support people with functional nutrition to align the body and the mind. Um, and it's the mold piece, yeah, that's sort of chronic illness has been thrown into the mix. But I love anything that really is starting with that gut, healing up, getting you feeling better, and feeling supported along the way.
Okay. And Colleen, you were a clinical therapist prior to changing careers, correct?
Yeah. Yes, I am still a licensed clinical social worker, and then went back to school for functional nutrition and haven't looked back since.
Next team member is Whitney, who also has a little baby bump growing in her belly. Hi, Whitney.
I do. I finally felt her flutter for the first time a couple days.
Yay.
That was super exciting. Similar to Colleen, have a story that started because of really diving into this space because of my own story and struggling for me with really debilitating bloating and constipation. So I had started, searching for answers, tried so many different practitioners, but I would always leave those appointments just feeling dismissed and defeated. So eventually, I actually did get the right testing and plan using a functional approach. And for the first time, I finally felt relief and was able to see some progress. So it gave me that confirmation that I had what I had been intuitively feeling, that something wasn't right all along, even though I was being told that it was just normal, that some people have to live with these GI issues. And so this led me to changing my career path during that time, because I didn't want anybody else to have to experience what I did for as long as I did without having answers. So, now after healing my own gut, I work with other women who are experiencing these same kind of frustrations. They know something isn't right in their body and they're just unsure what to do about it.
I think it's funny. A lot of people who do what we do have changed career paths. Every single one of us have changed somewhere. I've even had clients change their career path after healing their body. We're not asking you all to, but that would be amazing if everybody wanted to. And our newest team member, speaking of changing career paths, Devin, hello.
Hello, good morning. So yeah, my name is Devin. I'm the newest practitioner to the team. I am a registered nurse turned functional nutritionist. So I just got really burnt out with the conventional medical system, professionally and personally. I was struggling a lot with my own gut issues and hormone issues, insomnia. And so I was looking for my own answers. I ended up getting my master's in nutrition, so I switched gears. And then I became a restorative wellness practitioner, and I ended up fixing my own hormone issues, which my doctors told me I would probably struggle with for a long time. And now my goal is to help more women get to the root cause of their gut and hormone issues. And I love specializing in fertility and helping women optimize their chances for conception. So,
Love it. All right, let's go to some of the questions that we have been getting. Speaking of fertility, because this is one that we have been asked about, and this is something that we hear often. If you don't know, we have a fertility division. So while we do work with women on hormones, metabolism, body composition, gut health issues, fertility is one of the things that can actually be very aligned with that. One of the questions that we got was, I was told that I have unexplained infertility. What does this really mean? Is there anything that I can actually do about this? Sammy, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. Yeah, we actually get this often, and it's a little bit infuriating, that just like label of unexplained infertility, because it just leaves you feeling like it's hopeless or like it's outside of your control. And I think oftentimes this happens when they can't confirm it with a diagnosis, then they are going to say it's unexplained. And this is really where we can come in to really bridge that gap, because if you're having infertility issues, hormones are off, and hormones are a responder that something else inside the body is in dysfunction. And so, or in imbalance might be a better word for people. And so what we do is we're going to look at the other areas that are going to be impacting your hormones. So we're going to take a look. It's been mentioned several times already in intros. Your gut plays a major role when it comes to impacting your hormonal health, as well as your nervous system and essentially every other area. So we're going to look at your nutrition. We're going to look at your movement, at your sleep, at your stress response, because all of these will play a role and can significantly improve your chances of fertility. And that's where we're going to look at.
Awesome. All right, next question that we have had in here is, I'm feeling stuck with weight, but working out and eating healthy already. What am I missing? Colleen, do you have an answer for that one?
This is a question we probably get from almost everyone that we work with. And it's, it's that diet culture mentality where we come in, and if you eat less and if you work out more, you're going to lose weight. And oftentimes we see the opposite. We see women coming in that are vastly under consuming their nutrients and overworking out, sometimes 7 days a week, very intense workouts, and eating, under 1,000 calories or, just a tick above 1,000 calories. And that's one piece of it, is making sure that we're getting enough to eat, that the movement that we're getting is appropriate for us. Sammy, I know I love what you always have to say, that you have to earn the right to exercise, and it's so true. But sometimes we will see women also who are eating a very nutrient dense diet. They're getting enough calories. They're, aware of their macros. They're doing the right amount of exercise. And this is where we really need to dig deeper as well. you're going to hear us say this a lot, but this is where like what's going on in your gut that could be impacting your metabolism. Is there something in your thyroid? What are some of the other things that are happening? And that's where we dive deeper with some testing as well, and really get to the why these things are happening so that we can bring your body back into alignment.
I've shared before multiple times, like this was me like 12 years ago now at this point when I was a trainer. I was working out consistently and hard. It's not like my workouts weren't effective if we're looking for something being hard and making us sweaty and making us sore to be right the word that we're qualifying as effective, which is what we often use as a judge of whether or not our workout quote unquote did something, right? So by that standard, my workouts were doing all the things on paper that a lot of us think that they should be doing. I was eating in a calorie deficit based off of what on paper would have been a calorie deficit for my body. And yet within a 5-month period of time, I had gained 20 pounds. And when I was trying to do things differently, nothing was happening. The scale was not moving. My body physically felt stressed out. I felt inflamed. The scale was fluctuating dramatically. I felt like we've heard this before, right? But like I could look at a cheeseburger and gain 10 pounds. That's literally how I felt in my body. And by standard recommendation, you're going to see people say all over social media and the internet, well, you're just not in a calorie deficit. You need to be in a calorie deficit. If you're not losing weight, you must not be in a calorie deficit. I was already eating 1,500 calories for a grown woman at that point. So how much lower should I go is the question, right? That I often ask people, when is low enough? Like, how are you going to eat 800 calories and just to lose weight and get somewhere? Because then you also have to look at the trade-off of like, maybe 800 calories would technically be a calorie deficit because you're metabolically depleted. But then what's the other side of that? You're adding significantly more stress to your body. You're damaging your hormones at that point. Your endocrine system is taking a hit, all for the sake of 5 to 10 pounds on a scale, right? And you also have to look at the longevity of that. If I have to eat 800 calories less than my 6-year-old daughter to lose weight, then I have to assess, like, is this the proper thing for my body? And that's what doesn't get talked about very often. And we will often tell clients, like, I will not tell you that you're going to see that weight loss in a 6-month period of time, because I don't know how long it's going to take you to see those results. And that's the truest and most real answer we can tell someone. I will tell you that you will get the result, but I won't give you a timeline, because number one priority for our team is that you can get the result, but also have really healthy hormones at the same time. So if it takes you a 1.5 years to lose 15 pounds, but we were able to optimize your hormones during the process, then that means that you get to maintain that 15-pound weight loss for the next 10, 20 years without fighting your body. Sammy, did you have something to add to that?
I was just going to say, and odds are you can relate to this as well, being like starting from the fitness industry, this is one of the things that caused me to dive into women's health specifically, is because of how different men and women's bodies react and like create that caloric deficit and all the things that are involved. Like women's bodies are extremely intricate and sensitive, especially speaking of hormones and how that influences stuff. And so I think this is also, sometimes it can be frustrating when we have our male counterparts and it's like, well, they went into a caloric deficit, they ate a salad and they lost pounds, and it's not happening to me. But we really need to look at your female body and what's going on with you.
Yeah. And also there's a lot of ways that we judge that, right? Standard judges it by a scale. You can't just use the scale as your measurement. You got to look at body composition. But also there's the other aspect of that of like, God designed your body to be incredibly intelligent as a woman. And some simple paper math equation is not going to clarify what complexity happens in your body and in your system as a female. So you really need to, and this isn't meant to be discouraging, right, or intimidating. It's that it actually can be really simple, but your body needs to be supported entirely different. So something to keep in mind. Colleen?
Yeah, the body composition piece and the scale that you just mentioned, this is something that we also talk about in our community all the time. We just had this conversation the other day where I had shared that I've been working with a personal trainer myself for a 10-pound weight loss. And in 8 months, I have seen a size drop. I have seen inches lost. I have seen the body fat percentage decrease. However, the scale number itself has stayed the same. So if we're solely focusing on just the scale number, it can be a really frustrating process if you feel like you're doing all of these things. And it's looking at some of those other metrics like, inches, but also how you're feeling symptom wise. Like, are you having daily bowel movements? Is your energy, stable throughout the day? When you're done with a workout, do you feel energized or do you feel completely depleted? Is your sleep off? All of these different metrics that we touch on when we're individualizing this approach with clients.
Yeah, 100%. Switching gears a little bit, one of the other questions we got was, I am anxious all the time. I can't sleep, but I am doing all the things. Colleen, clinical therapist, do you want to answer that?
The all the things piece is the one that I question all the time, because sometimes all the things that we're doing is actually adding to our stress burden. So it's really about, are we going through these motions just to check a box, or are we actually engaged in the process and being present in the moment? And so I will often tell people, like, just sit and do nothing, because that's what your nervous system needs. When we are anxious and we have these ruminating thoughts, it's our mind and our body in overdrive. We can look deeper nutritionally, when we look at where neurotransmitters are made and different things like that, that we're going to go back to gut health, of course, but there's a lot of lifestyle factors that we can engage in. This goes back to sleep. This goes back to, asking for help and different things like that as well. So there's a lot of different factors, but the biggest thing that I tell people is, what does your daily schedule look like? If you put your schedule into a Google Calendar and that looks overwhelming to you, then it's overwhelming. And that's where we really want to take that step back. What do you actually need to be doing? Where's a boundary that needs to be set? Who can you ask for help? And then what are the ways that you can support yourself? And even that might just be doing a 5 to 10 minute meditation or breath work every single day. And that's what is helping to engage that nervous system, instead of your bedtime routine looking like, okay, I have to read and I have to get in the bath and I have to stretch. And I'm stressed out about all of these things, because that's not actually calming you down and decreasing your anxiety at the end of the day. So sometimes we just need to sit and do nothing.
You made a comment the other day of like, well, I have to work out and then I have to eat well and I have to drink the water and I have to do this. And like, how do you do all of that? And I was like, okay, I'm going to give you a different perspective. If taking care of your health feels overwhelming to you, you're living a lifestyle that's unsustainable. Because if you cannot take care of your health in the most simple way of, I was like, I don't mean to break your heart, but working out and drinking water and eating vegetables and protein and going to bed on time is not going anywhere, no matter what your goal is. That's something that needs to be consistent, not perfect, no matter what the goal is, because it is literally for long-term health, not weight loss. So if that is overwhelming to you, you're living unsustainably, which is a tough pill to swallow sometimes. It means that there's something in your lifestyle and what you're doing that's got to take a shift. Otherwise, this is going to catch up to you at some point. And how you're feeling in your skin is more often than not, and your inability to stick to some sort of like consistent nutrition plan or anything like that is more often than not related to your lifestyle more than the actual program or diet that you're doing. Whitney, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to touch. I mean, Colleen said this a little bit about nighttime routine, and it doesn't have to look like this extravagant, routine that you have to fit in before bed. But one of the things we are addressing with clients a lot when they come to us and say, I'm having trouble sleeping, is, do you have some kind of restoration practice before you're going to bed? Because we really have to learn how to prep our body to prepare itself for a good night's sleep, and not just think that as soon as we lay down and hit the pillow, our body's going to know what to do, and our brain's going to shut off and our body's going to calm down. So I think it comes down to really that kind of, prepping that sleep environment and giving your body something it needs to kind of prepare yourself to get into that quality state of sleep too.
100%. I always explain it to parents with kids, like, you know how you have to take your kids through a bedtime routine? Really, what you're doing in that routine is you are transitioning their mind, right, in their brain from like the day stimulus to like rest time, right? It's the same thing with you. Now that your kids have gotten used to that routine, it doesn't need to be a full hour long process, right? My kids have gotten used to their usual routine. So there's some nights where we're doing bath and doing all that stuff, but then there's also some nights where we're brushing our teeth, putting our jammies on, reading a book, and going to bed. This could be the same thing for you. Whatever that is, the different tools in the toolbox, if you've had a more stimulated day, maybe it is a little bit more of a restorative flow in that routine. But the whole point, like Whitney said, is to give your brain the break from the day's stimulus to the night's sleep to get quality in that sleep. We're going to transition into another question that we got that kind of piggybacks on this. And it's, I've been told that my thyroid is fine, but I feel like crap still. What else can I do? This was literally part of my story. I was told by 3 doctors my thyroid was fine. No one was pulling the full thyroid panel, and I actually had clinically low hypothyroid. Colleen, I know you get this question a lot. Do you want to jump in on that one?
I do. We often hear this when we start off with people as well, you know, where they'll say, well, we'll recommend blood work. Oh, I've had blood work done and I've been told everything's fine.
Yeah.
And we take a look at that blood work for thyroid, particularly, we'll see a TSH, maybe 1 or 2 other markers, but not a full thyroid panel. And rarely are we seeing antibodies checked to see if there's some sort of autoimmune situation going on. So it is incredibly important when we look at thyroid health that we're not just looking at a TSH, which is actually a pituitary hormone, not for thyroid. And, you know, it's giving us some information on that conversation between our system and our pituitary and our thyroid and how that's conversing with each other, but it's not telling us the actual function of the thyroid. And so we want to look at both the active and inactive hormones in there. And again, how they're talking to each other. You know, looking at just one isn't going to give us the conversion of active or inactive to active either. So it is really looking at the full picture. And this is a game changer for so many people, because when we are switching from just looking at a TSH to looking at the full picture, we can truly see where the dysfunction is lying. Is this something that we need to support from like a cellular level? Is this something that we need to just do some nourishing? Do we need to give the thyroid more support? Do we need to nourish the gut a little bit more? It gives us a lot more direction, and we see results from that so much quicker than just monitoring a TSH.
Yeah, it's and just to clarify, you know, we're not here to diagnose or do anything along those lines. We're working with you. We're really just looking at how is the body functioning from an optimal standpoint, and then what are the things that we can do from a nutritional lifestyle perspective to bring your body back into balance, right? And your hormones, especially, not just your thyroid, but your thyroid is hormones, as well as your sex hormones, and all of those work on a feedback loop. Right. So there's a communication loop that's happening in the body with those. And we're really looking at what is the communication that's happening. And if you're not looking at all of the communication pathways, you're not getting a full picture of what is going on. Just the same as with sex hormones. If you're only testing your sex hormones on one day of the month, you're not seeing the whole communication loop that's happening in there, but you're also not seeing what else can be interfering or playing a role into what can be impacting that communication loop. Other pieces of your body play a role. So like Colleen was talking about with your thyroid, you actually have conversion that happens in your liver and in your gut. So if the thyroid is off in somewhere, then we also need to assess, could the liver be playing a role? Could the gut be playing a role? What else could be impacting the thyroid function? Because the reason we don't work from a diagnostic standpoint is, 1, it's out of our scope, but 2, a lot of times it stops at the diagnosis. And our goal is to look beyond that to see, well, why did this even occur in the first place? And how can we support the body in feeling your absolute best, regardless of whatever your diagnosis is? Devin, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, something I see a lot too is women who are diagnosed with hypothyroidism and are placed on a T4 only medication like Synthroid, and are still having their symptoms of feeling like crap. And that's often because, since it is a T4 only medication, it still has to convert to T3. And if your body doesn't do that, then you're still going to feel like crap on that medication. So I really encourage you to talk to your doctor about that and make sure that they are testing a full thyroid panel to see what your T3 and especially your inactive thyroid or active thyroid hormones are. And if necessary, you might need to be added like a T3 medication or a supplement to help with that conversion.
Yeah, that's actually what happened to me. And I knew enough to ask, like, are you checking my T3? Well, one, my doctor didn't even think that there was a reason to check my T3. He told me it was useless. So that was red flag number one. Number two, when I did have the levels checked from someone else and brought them back in because I was clinically low, I was asking for thyroid medication. And they were going to give me Synthroid or levothyroxine, which is only T4. And I was like, well, if my T4 was already sufficient, but my T3 was clinically low, wouldn't you give me something with T3 in it? And they were like, well, they didn't know anything beyond it. So I actually take Armor because it's T4 and T3 and is a more natural form. But that's something that you really need to pay attention to and ask and dig for questions. And if they don't have the answer, sometimes it's a red flag. Next question that we have gotten in here is, should I take, I don't know how to say this, spironolactone for hormonal acne? Nothing I do or change in diet is working. This is a really good question. I actually took Accutane as a teenager for hormonal acne. So, Devin, I'd love for you to answer this one.
Yes, so spironolactone is a high blood pressure medication. That is what it's clinically used for. It's a potassium-sparing diuretic to help the body retain potassium and eliminate sodium. So that's what it's clinically used for. But a lot of women are being prescribed it to help with their hormonal acne because it does also have an effect on our androgen production. And so it can help lower the DHEA and testosterone, which is often what can cause that cystic hormonal acne. So a lot of women go to that for that support and that relief. But what people don't understand is that A, this is a medication that is for your blood pressure, and B, it's a medication that comes with side effects. So yes, it might, help with your acne, but it's going to mess up your menstrual cycle because it's going to have an impact on your estrogen levels, your LH levels. And so that can throw off your overall hormone balance. And then it can also disrupt your electrolyte imbalance too, which can be potentially pretty serious, especially since we're dealing with potassium and sodium. When those become off balance, that can actually lead to heart rhythm irregularities. So you need to be really careful on that medication and just understand that it is a Band-Aid. It's not actually getting to the root cause of why do you have this acne, what's causing it, and how can we fix that root cause?
Okay, let's speak on hormonal acne because this is a common question that we get. And people are told to take birth control, right, or different options within it. So when we're talking hormonal acne, what are some of the bigger areas that someone should be looking if they really want to address the deeper issue?
I would definitely look at toxic burden when it comes to gut health. So what are you eating? What are you exposed to? I would do a GI map to look at the gut balance to see if there are any inflammatory bacteria or pathogens that might be contributing to that toxic burden. I would look at liver function as well because our liver is responsible for metabolizing our hormones, medications like the spironolactone and other toxins. So if there's a big toxic burden, the liver is going to struggle with that. And then looking at your overall hormonal balance as well. So looking to see, okay, well, where are the imbalances? What is your actual testosterone level and DHEA levels? And how can we help the body rebalance that natural production and that natural communication?
Sure. Whitney, gut health queen. I know the gut can play a huge role in that as well. Do you want to add a little bit to that?
Yeah, I always I like to use the analogy that like our body tried to tell us something from our symptoms that we're seeing, right? We just always don't like to listen to what, our body is telling us. And so when we have a lot of, if it's acne, even if it's rosacea, eczema, any of these skin conditions, I just like to tell it's kind of our gut's way of saying like, hey, look at me, something needs to be addressed here. Like there is a deeper root cause. And a lot of times it is going back to that connection with what's going on in the gut.
Yeah, Your gut is literally responsible for supporting detoxification, right? And like Devin said, your liver plays a role in that as well. So if your body is struggling to detox things in the way that it's designed to, it's really smart. So it's going to try to push those things out in another pathway, which is your skin. So that's where acne and eczemas and those things can really start to come from, is it's really at the root, there's a detoxification issue happening somewhere in the body. And what it's trying to detox out or what that could be really needs to be assessed and look at, and then really look at what are the things that play a role in detoxification in my body, and are those functioning their best to really help to move these things out in here as well. Colleen, do you have something to add into that? Well, you're muted.
Excuse me. You give me a minute.
So let's transition to another question that we have in here that kind of goes back to the gut health as well. Any tips on how to not catch literally everything my kids bring home from school? I know this is due to sicknesses. I already said this has to do with gut health, but Sammy, you want to add into that one?
Absolutely. Speaking as somebody whose kid constantly comes home with something. So a lot of people aren't aware that the majority of your immune system actually resides in your gut. So, and then our gut is also, if you think about it, it's the like entry point for a lot of different types of pathogens to come in. And when we say pathogens, we mean viruses and bacterias and things like that. So again, going back to kind of how God designed our body was designed to be able to handle these pathogens coming in. But when things are in a certain level of like imbalance or dysfunction, then that can compromise this stuff. So when your gut's amiss, when it's not able to do its job properly, and it's dealing with a lot of different types of bacterias and parasites and different things that can potentially be coming in, and that's impacting your immune system, then when your little loved one comes home from school and has something, since you're already compromised, since your immune system's already compromised, you're much more likely to actually become ill from that. It's actually my son just this past week, he's 4.5 and came home, and when his immune system is responding, he always has this little bit of like a low-grade fever, and then he'll get this like little rash on his face. But he acts fine. It lasts for about 24 hours, and then he's back to himself. And going back to Whitney's point, sometimes our skin can be like that sign or signal of like, hey, something's going on. But I can tell that his immune system's working because he'll have that little fever, which is, that immune response, and he'll have that little rash, and then he's fine. His immune system did its job. It fought off whatever virus was coming in, and then he's back to his normal self. Where as parents, sometimes if we're already in this really depleted state and our immune system's already kind of bottomed out, then they come home with something and we're going to get like wham, bam, hit with it, right? And we're out for like 3 or 4 days. So going back to, if we help support the gut, we help support the nervous system, we can get things working optimally, then when we're exposed to this stuff, it's not going to have such a big impact.
Yeah, there's another question that we had, right? How do you stay healthy as a mom? I feel like I am barely surviving over here, right? And that could be sicknesses. There can be other things that play a role in there too. But this always shocks people, especially parents with young kids, when I say like you actually shouldn't get sick more than 1 to 2 times a year. And that if you do, it's a reflection that there's something, up with your immune response in your body, whether it's coming from your gut or there's something else that's playing a role in there. But the first place we do want to look is the gut to see what could be, triggering that or suppressing your body's ability to ward and fight things off the way that it should. And there's a lot of things that can play a role in there, but especially when we're talking about gut health and sicknesses, it's your body's incredibly intelligent. We've already said it, right? Your body's stress response can play a huge role in its ability to manage sicknesses. So it's usually no shock that when you have had extremely stressful weeks or a lot of things going on, that you usually get sick at very inconvenient times. And we've done a podcast episode on this of if you don't hold boundaries in your life, your body will in some way, shape, or form, right? So it's usually no shock. Yeah, like you get sick on vacation, right? Or get sick from coming home from vacation, or whatever it is, because there's usually a uptick in stressors or things that you need to manage around those times of your life. And there's usually not a counter to that brought in, meaning when you have an uptick in stress, you need an uptick in restorative support, meaning maybe some of those more intense workouts become something like a yoga, or maybe that 7 hours of sleep becomes 8 because we do need to prioritize some more supportive care and recovery and restoration for your body. Yeah, and Sammy said this is why it's so important for us to pull in proactive restoration. We very often talk about like restoration shouldn't be a reactive thing. It shouldn't be, oh my gosh, I'm sick, now I'm going to go sleep. It should be I haven't been sleeping and that's why my body's sick and it's literally begging me for sleep, right? Your body's holding a boundary with you because you weren't holding it yourself in some way, shape, or form. Another question that we have gotten is, what is your opinion on intermittent fasting? I hear this one all the time. Whitney, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, I've actually been hearing this question a ton lately too, and specifically from women. So, first of all, you can find a lot of great evidence on some incredible benefits that come from intermittent fasting and used in a very specific purpose. But the caveat here is that most of those studies are performed on men who do not go through, the different hormonal shifts throughout the entire month that we do. So a men's hormone cycle, really comes down to like a 24-hour period versus our full monthly cycle. So I'm always cautious of using intermittent fasting with women for this reason. Plus, if you think about fasting itself, like it is actually a stress on the body. So we also have to look at you as an individual and how well that your body is responding to all of the other stressors that you have going on in your life right now. Because if your nervous system's dysregulated and your body is having a difficult time managing the stress that you already have from your work life and your home life and all of these things, then bringing in something like intermittent fasting can actually cause a lot more harm than good.
It's funny, I have a client whose thyroid suddenly started not being optimal and she started having some symptoms. So I was like, let's pull and see what's going on. So we look at it, and so I'm like, let's dig in, let's figure out some things that could be playing a role, work through a few things, we see it improve. And then last week she was like, you know what's funny? She's like, I'm wondering if this could play a role. I stopped eating my breakfast at like my usual time in the morning, and I was eating my breakfast around like 11 a.m. or noon. Do you think that could impact my thyroid? And I was like, interesting. How long have you been doing that? And she's like, I don't know. I just didn't think to share it with you. It's been a few months. And I was like, oh, funny. That few months time frame that your thyroid hasn't been optimal is the time that we adjusted and started fasting, right? So I was 1,000% that can be playing a role into why it's not feeling good. That is a sign that your body is not responding well to you skipping it. But also you've been skipping breakfast, but drinking coffee at 8 a.m. and then not eating for several hours afterwards until you literally felt hunger and needed to. So yes, not feeling hungry in the morning is a sign that metabolically your body is not responding appropriately the way that it should. You should feel hungry in the morning. And if you're not, it's actually a red flag.
Yeah, definitely.
Sammy, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think sometimes this is where I think a lot of people can get confused because intermittent fasting, it's like, what is intermittent fasting, right? What is a normal fasting window versus like something that would be considered intermittent fasting? So if you're not eating for, if you're eating dinner at 5 p.m. and then having your breakfast at 7 a.m., that's a 14-hour fasting window, and that's totally appropriate. So we're getting really, really aggressive. And I think sometimes because of marketing and just culture, we try to get super aggressive with things. And I think a lot of times people want to do intermittent fasting because it's like restricting the amount of hours that they're eating so they don't overconsume.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we're going back to, we're not trying to trick the body. If you're trying to trick your body, you're going to end up losing because your body is incredibly intelligent and will adapt. So rather than trying to trick your body to eat less by saying, well, I can only eat in these 6 hours, but why don't we actually try nourishing the body and learning how to work with the body? So then that way you don't have to be super restrictive on the stuff. You can actually support it altogether. So I think sometimes we can get lost in the marketing of, the like sexiness, if you will, of like the intermittent fasting, when it's really just, a lot of times it's just trying to trick the body. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, fasting is fasting. If I go 4 hours between my meals, it's technically a fast. So we need to have a little bit of perspective of just throwing a fancy name onto something. Like, we're not reinventing the wheel here. You've already been fasting through the night. If we're trying to Sammy's point, if we're trying to trick the body, the question instead should be, why are you not able to eat in the morning and be mindful of your choices through the day? And we need to adjust maybe that relationship with food, versus instead of trying to trick and avoid the relationship with food that needs to be addressed. Because if you don't address that, the deeper root issue, we're going to stay in this cycle. And if it's not intermittent fasting, it's going to be the keto diet, or it's going to be something else that you're jumping to, which you'll hear us often say, those are therapeutic diets actually at the end of the day, right? So there can be an appropriate time and place to use things like that. But you shouldn't have to be on a therapeutic diet for life. So, and if you do, then the question is why? And we need to go to what's the short term need, and then what's the long term solution that you can maintain. One of
Let's
these,
just add one more piece to this that kind of goes into that, like, that overnight fasting period between, ending your dinner and then having your breakfast is a great rest period. Because I was also giving some feedback when somebody asked me this question. They said, well, I thought that was actually, what our gut needed for that reset. And I was like, that's what you have to think about, is you are giving your gut that break, that normal break from dinner to breakfast. And the other thing to think about when it comes to like giving your gut the break it needs to be able to process, digest its food, it comes down to, how are you structuring your meals throughout the day? And are we having really balanced, structured meals, versus are we snacking all day long and we're constantly pushing our body into having to restart digestion? So it looks at more of like, how's the balance of your meals throughout the day, and less so of like, I have to extend my nightly fast to give my body that break it needs.
yeah.
Yeah, and to really help with just balancing the blood sugar. I have a lot of clients who are insulin resistant, and that's where the fasting can be very beneficial, because when we do fast for a longer period of time, that absolutely can help improve insulin sensitivity. So what I recommend in those situations is having that earlier dinner, and to not be snacking late at night, but still having that breakfast within an hour of waking up, so that you're still not messing with that stress response and getting those nutrients in the morning. But it absolutely comes down to, what do your meals look like throughout the day, so that your body can sustain that fast overnight.
Yeah, 100%. It's weird because we said context matters, right? There's a lot of context into that answer in there.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of another question with context, I'm not getting a cycle, and my doctor is suggesting the pill. I don't like the idea, but I feel stuck. Um, I mean, not just like not getting a cycle, getting irregular cycles, getting PMS, all of these things is one that we often hear the pill suggested for. Devin, you actually had a really good thing you shared about this the other day. Do you want to touch base on hormonal birth control and cycles?
Yeah. Well, being someone who had amenorrhea for almost 5 years, I definitely understand that. The doctors just wanted me to keep going back on birth control, and told me that I would probably have to be on birth control for life. And if I wanted to conceive, that I would have to come off the pill and probably use IVF, which was just really disheartening to hear. Birth control does not regulate your cycle. And that's often the term that the doctors use, is that, oh, just take this pill, it will regulate your cycle. And that's really confusing, because when we think in terms of regulating, that usually means that we're supporting the body's natural process and allowing it to adjust and acclimate to that supplement or to that medication. But birth control actually controls your cycle. So it completely manipulates your cycle by suppressing ovulation and inducing a fake bleed every month when you stop taking the last week of your pill pack. So it's not really regulating, it's not really supporting your cycle, it's just completely stopping it, and it doesn't address the root cause. So taking birth control to address your irregular cycle or amenorrhea will not actually fix the underlying root cause. And for me, that was addressing my thyroid health, my nervous system, and my gut health. And that's how I ultimately got my own period back.
Yeah, it's It's something we hear often, and you've heard us reference a couple times, right? Your hormones are a responder. There's a feedback loop. We have to look at the things that are playing a role in that feedback loop. But in the simplest form, I often say, like, God designed your body to function and feel really good. And anytime that we are stepping in and interfering with a natural process that's occurring in our body, there's going to be a consequence that's going to come along the way. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, maybe taking birth control to prevent a pregnancy is something that you want to choose to do, but then you need to be aware of what the consequences of that may be. Maybe there's vitamins and minerals that are getting depleted that we need to support, and there's things that can happen to the gut health that we need to do to support the body when we're doing it. So we're not saying not do something, but the most important thing to us is be empowered in the decision you're making and know what you needed to just do to support the negative or positive consequence that can happen. It's really important to just be aware of what are the things that are on the other side of this, and is this a decision that I want to make and that is right for me. Sammy, go ahead.
I just want to caveat by saying that a lot of times the reason that we choose, and it's not even like this, not even just the pill, but kind of back to Devin's point, like the medication that's a blood pressure medication, but used for acne. We choose that because it seems like the easiest option, and we don't really know how else to support ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I just want to encourage anybody who is going through this, one, of course, reach out to us, but two, there are so many things that you can do, very simple things in your everyday life that will completely change your periods and how you're feeling and functioning. It doesn't always have to be this really, really complicated, overwhelming process. In fact, to Brooke's point, it's not supposed to be. God designed your body to be able to function really well every day. So if you're out of alignment there, I always go back to the foundations first. That's where we like to start with all of our clients coming in, is those basic everyday foundations, and how you're eating and how you're sleeping and how you're moving and how you're stressing. That can really help.
Helene, I know you got something to add to that.
Yeah, I just loved what you said, Sammy, where it's, you know, we just need to simplify, because this is one of the pieces of like society now where we're so overcomplicating things. And if there's this one issue, we're masking it with all of these medications, and masking the side effects of the medications with more medications, and our body becomes so dysregulated we don't even know what's what anymore. And it's really just thinking very simple, which can be hard. It can be really challenging because we're sort of trained to like, what's the next thing I can do, or what's the next thing I can do. But it truly is simplifying, you know, making sure you're getting enough water is something that we see so often is not done. And that alone can impact not almost, but it can impact every system of your body. You know, so it's looking at these really foundational steps to support your body, and understand that when we're adding something like the pill into the mix, it's still a Band-Aid approach. It's not really getting to the why this is happening.
Yeah, I love that you said simple too, right? Because we have become so out of alignment. And I love that you mentioned society, right? In a lot of the ways that we live and do things, that Sammy said, choosing the pill does feel like the simple option and the simple choice. Because like I mentioned earlier, the idea of drinking enough water and moving your body and going to bed on time and eating fruits and vegetables and eating adequate protein feels very overwhelming. But it feels overwhelming because we're not living a sustainable lifestyle. And a lot of it comes back to your hormones are responders, and your hormones are dysregulated or out of alignment or not functioning best or whatever it is, because we're living an unsustainable lifestyle. And again, this goes back to the sickness. Your body is holding a boundary for you. And your body's literally screaming at you with symptoms that it needs some boundaries in the ways that you're doing something. And that can be one of the hardest things to grasp, because a lot of times we'll say this, and even our clients, guys, this can take a little time to adjust. This is hard. This takes time to move through, because we'll still have the question of like, okay, but what supplement? But like, what about my hormones? And I'm like, literally everything we're working on is to support your hormones. When we're supporting a healthy gut, we're supporting healthy hormones. When we're supporting a healthy nervous system, we're supporting healthy hormones. When we go to bed on time, we're supporting healthy hormones, right? That is all supporting your hormones. We've been conditioned to, well, I have to take a pill. So then our thought process transfers from, instead of birth control, then what supplement do I take? But that's still the same thought process of, I still have to take a pill. Instead of birth control form, I'm just looking for the supplement form. Devin, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, and I think people enjoy that simplification with the pill because you do get your cycle right away. You get that fake period each month, so you think your cycle is regulated. So it really does mess with that intuitive communication with your body, or that like response. Um, and what we often forget as women is that our menstrual cycle, our period, is really a fifth vital sign too. So when we take that away and we suppress it, we really lose a lot of what our body's trying to tell us when our period is irregular, or we have PMS, or it goes missing. So we can't listen to those cues the body's telling us when we suppress it or take that medication.
100%. To piggyback on this, there's another question that we've gotten around hormone replacement therapy. So especially as we're moving into perimenopause, menopause stages, a big thing that can be recommended is hormonal replacement therapy. And this is a question that we get often of like, what do you think about this? And should I use this or whatever? So to answer this, we also have to backtrack into what's actually happening in your body in perimenopause and menopause. And that can help to answer, again, context, right? Of like, if using something like that is the right option for you. Whitney, I know you are very well versed on this subject. Can you answer that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, most of us, just like we're kind of talking about this conversation, we've been conditioned to believe that, especially with menopause, like that transition has to be this like terrible, rocky ride that we all have to experience. But really, when we're experiencing any kind of imbalance going through that menopause transition, a lot of times it's just what we've been talking about. It's that natural reflection and like continued manifestation of the imbalances that were already going on before. So if you were having those problems and imbalances with your cycle when you were younger and you were, just going on the pill to suppress it and not really digging into the root issue, those same issues are going to be coming at play when you're moving into menopause. So, short answer, no, HRT is not the only option. I think it really comes down to being more proactive now, doing the deeper work on digging into the root cause of imbalances that are at play right now that you're currently experiencing, because that's going to make a huge difference in how your body reacts to the transition. We've talked about all of these things where we're going to sound like a broken record here, because hormones are responders in the body. And so they might be where you're dealing with the symptoms. But again, we have to go back to the issue probably lies with your nutrition, your lifestyle, your stress, your gut health, and how you're managing all of these things, which is why we bring all of these components into the individual work we do with clients. And really kind of this, don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm already 45. Like, is it too late that it's never too late to start addressing making some of these foundational changes. But we also like to stress the importance of like, hey, it's actually really beneficial to start thinking about this like in your 30s, because that's when we can make the biggest change. And so you don't have to experience that like terrible transition to menopause.
Menopause felt like a bad word to me. And then when I went through like our hormone training, I remember her talking about menopause and how some things can actually start in your early 40s. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not that far away from that. And it was a little humbling for a second that I was like, oh, I got to start thinking about this now. And it's not that you need to like treat yourself like you're in that stage now, but you really do need to know, what are the things that are playing a role in that transition. And as you're going through that, Whitney said stress, right? Your adrenals actually play a huge role in what can happen during that transition. And when we talk about stress, we all have stress in our life. We're not expecting that you're just living some zen, super simple life, hanging out on the beach. Like that's not our reality behind the scenes either. But it is about training your body to appropriately respond to stress. And if your body cannot appropriately respond to stress, that's when we start to see issues come into play. If I always relate to clients, because we'll say like, how's stress? And people are just like, I don't know, it's fine, because you're used to your stress. I am used to the fact that I own a business and I have a 6-year-old and I have a 3-year-old and we've got bills to pay and all these different things that life throws at us. But I promise you, if I traded positions with someone who didn't have the same lifestyle as me, my life stress would feel significant to them. and probably vice versa. So you're used to your stress, you live with it day in and day out, which means that you probably undervalue the role that it is playing in how you're feeling and your overall lifestyle and the things that need to be adjusted, because your body again is very intelligent. You have adapted to it. You're used to living with it. So it's really important that we look at those restorative tools and what's the compounding impact of some of those stressors that are there. And just knowing that at certain stages of your life, there might be things that we're doing differently to support the things that you are enduring. I constantly take stress supports right now because I do have a 6 and a 3-year-old who are more demanding in my life. And that comes with its whole host, if you have young kids, of things that can come along with the stressors. So I just know that at this stage of my life, there's certain things that I need to do to support the way that my body is getting hit with that stress. Anybody else have anything to add in?
I think you just made a good point about like, recognizing the stage of life you're at and having to like know how to support your body through that stress. Because I think that what happens is that when women don't do that, and what happens is by the time we reach that age, if we're moving into menopause, it's this compounding interest of what we've been enduring day in, day out, of raising a family, having a career, like all of these things, versus if we can be more proactive about managing those things, we don't have that like compounding interest that's like overflowing the bucket.
Yeah. Colleen, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, it's that mindset, so kind of like you said, you have a 6 and a 3-year-old, I have a 7 and a 3-year-old. I mean, like, these are not super smooth ages. There's a lot going on there, but that is also like your mindset too. You can look at any stage of life and find something wrong. You can also look at any stage of life and find the beauty in it and really appreciate where you're at. But this is also where we see clients succeed or not too, is if we're going into something and feeling really hopeful and feeling really excited and in knowing that our body is going to respond to these things, we see better results than somebody who is telling themselves that they're just going to fail repeatedly. Your body listens to every single thing you tell it. So that mindset is huge when you're working on anything, really.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece to kind of wrap it up too, right? To really look at, one of the questions we actually had a couple weeks ago in one of our membership calls is, what are the reasons and the core reason that you're making the decision that you are? Are you doing it out of love for your body, or are you doing it because you dislike yourself and dislike your body? A lot of times we go into workout programs, diets, etc., because we hate something about ourselves. And that's not a long-term approach to what you're doing. You will stop at some point, and then you're going to feel like you failed, and you're going to struggle with that from the mental standpoint because you weren't able to succeed with it. And it's not because you couldn't be successful. It's because you were maybe choosing to do some of those things for the wrong reasons. I posted the other day, I was eating vegetables and hummus, and I was enjoying what I was eating, but I enjoyed eating it because I was doing it because I love nourishing myself, and it feels good to eat things that make me feel good. 7 years ago, that would not have been my thought process. It would have not been the way that I looked at some of those things. It would have been out of like, I just want to fit comfortably in my clothes. And that is why I struggled with cyclical patterns with nutrition, because I did not do those things out of love for myself, out of love for my body, out of nourishing the vessel God gave me, right? For all the reasons that I should and could, and out of like, I can feel really good if I do this. And to Colleen's point, we see a vast difference when we're working with someone, when they're making choices out of a long-term love for yourself and because you want to feel good, and because the things that you want or the goals you have come out of you making choices that make you feel good. So when we work with clients, one of the biggest things that we work through is, how do you actually want to feel? When you tell me you want to lose 30 pounds, why? And what is it usually something that you imagine yourself feeling 30 pounds less at that? So it's really important that we really take that question into consideration, because that radically changes the process and the journey and how we reach a goal. we know it's possible for you to reach a goal. We're here to hold space for you, to support you, to guide you, to meet you. One of the most important things is meet you where you're at in your life and take you to where you want to be. But that also means that we're going to help support and guide through some of the things that you feel about yourself and think about yourself along that way too. I had a client make a comment to me. She's like, oh, okay, don't be mad at me because I was bad. And I was like, you weren't bad, and I would never be mad at you. You're human. You made a decision as a human, and you're imperfect, and that's natural. So we can't be beating ourselves up or thinking that we're good or bad because of it. All right, ladies. Well, thank you for being here. If you guys were listening and something's resonating with you today, there is an inquiry form posted in the show notes. Feel free to fill it out. When you fill it out, I will reach out to you and connect with you. We'll get on a phone call. It's completely free to just have a discussion about where you're currently at, what levels of support you feel like you need, and if working with us is the right fit for you at this time. I hope you're having a great week. We'll see you soon.
Bye.